If something in your relationship feels off, but you can't explain why. If you've spent years trying harder in the relationship and yet it just keeps hurting, this space is for you. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. Today's episode is about covert narcissism and the deep exhaustion that comes from always being the one who tries in the relationship. If you're living with or recovering from a covert narcissistic relationship, you may recognize this immediately. You're the one who explains, softens, repairs, revisits conversations, manages emotions, and keeps hoping that if you say it just right, then things will finally change. Instead, you end up emotionally depleted, confused, and wondering why nothing ever sticks. In this community chat, I'm joined by Laura and Jay, who share what it's like to live inside this dynamic, where effort is constant, responsibility is one sided, and the emotional labor never ends. We talk about how this pattern develops, why it's so hard to stop trying, and how many survivors reach a moment of clarity when they realize that this is not normal relationship struggle. It's covert narcissistic abuse. If you feel worn down from over explaining, over accommodating, overworking everything, carrying all the emotional weight of the relationship alone, this episode will help you put words to what you are experiencing. Let's dive in. So, welcome to our community chat number 2 for CNG, and I'm super excited today. Today, we have Laura and Jay joining us for this conversation. So, I want to welcome them to the show today. Laura, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me on your show today.
Well, very glad to have you here. I always enjoy talking to the people who come on here. And Jay, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good morning from not so sunny Australia this morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, welcome here. Yeah, it's not morning here. I'm in the evening time where I am, and I think Laura, so are you.
Yes,
But
we just
across,
got more snow.
you're expecting more snow? Goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had a ton of ice where I am, so we've been fighting the ice storms. So. All right, well, let's get started. Today's topic is the exhaustion of always being the one who tries. And I think that is the understatement of the century. The exhaustion, that word exhaustion doesn't even touch the level of exhaustion we're talking about. And always being the one who tries, that doesn't touch it either, on this. So I want to get started. I want to ask both of you, and feel free, whoever wants to answer first. What brought you to this particular topic?
Laura, you can go first if you like.
Because I really want to improve myself in that area, and hopefully other people can learn from that.
Okay, absolutely. Can you trace it back to, like connect the dots back to childhood learning, or did this
Yeah.
come it came from back there? Yeah.
Yes. I had a lot of chaos in my family. There was always a lot of, um, you never knew what was going to happen next. And I was the youngest, and my role was just kind of to be the one to provide comfort and light to everyone. So I definitely have been preconditioned to be the one to just keep trying and overextending myself.
I get that. I mean, I can relate to that completely because I can connect all the dots back to my childhood too. So I do understand that. Jay, what brings you to this topic?
I think similarly, it's a pattern that does extend way back. You know, even with other relationships I've had in the past who weren't even with a narcissist, I could still see that. You know, I took a lot of responsibility in, if there were any disagreements, being the one to try and make sure there was a lot of communication and discussions and trying to repair, and I do still see that imbalance going back as well. Um, yeah, it but taken advantage of by the narcissist with that is a completely different outcome. So yeah, this is definitely, I think a lot of people can identify with this utter exhaustion of trying so hard with very minimal, if anything, in return for it. So absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you've already touched on it leads us right into the next question, which is what does that being the one who tries, what does that actually look like in your day-to-day life? And you kind of touched on it with being the one trying to bring everybody back to repair, and I can relate to that a lot. So what does that look like for you when you're putting in all this effort? What did that look like in the relationship or in the home life?
For me, it's looked like, there was maybe something said that was hurtful, or something done that wasn't okay or respectful, and the choice seemed to be to either not say anything and to just take it, or to hope for a respectful discussion where, hey, if I'm dealing with a reasonable person, they should be okay to discuss this with me so that we can reach a resolution and learn something and grow with this. Um, but it would be every disagreement, or every time something would happen, it would always be me to bring it up, and then of course coming from that would be the negative, immature reactions of the attack, and the reversing the victim, and the blame shifting, and the whole kit and caboodle. Uh, so and it would each discussion could be hours, it'd be so much time and energy poured into it. And it just felt like, if I can explain this enough, if I can justify it enough, if I can help walk him through it enough, then surely if he cares about me and our relationship, then it should make a difference. But it always seemed to be that, um, it would feel like I was discussing something very simple and basic, but for him, it would feel like I was trying to teach him, um, yeah, a master's level science
Like
concept, or
physics.
something.
Yes. Yeah,
I can
that's a
completely relate to that.
go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, no, I always felt like, if I could just explain it better every time I'd go into, I'd even call it the ring, because it was like this ring of, it wasn't a battle, but to me, it felt like it. Like I had to have these superhuman powers to, you know, think 10 steps ahead. If I say it this way, I'll get this reaction. If I say it this way, I'll get this reaction. So I would have to overthink. It was exhausting. If I could just explain it better, more clearly, more lovingly, I focused so much on using the I feel statements so that it wasn't accusatory or putting them on the defense. Um, and especially, not generalizing like you always. Instead, I'd say, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. And it was exhausting. And then at times, I don't know if Jay, you can relate to this, but I'd feel like after hours, like you said, we'd finally get to an epiphany. And I'd be so excited thinking, we're making progress, we're getting somewhere. And then a few days later, it was like the discussion never happened. And it was so defeating and exhausting. And it just, I never felt like we were really getting anywhere.
Absolutely. I definitely identify with that. Towards the end of the discussion, there would be this amazing point where they would demonstrate that they've understood, and that they can see it now, and you'd think, "Oh, great," and there's the words of apologies, and there's um the quick promises of sudden change, for then going forward, and the words of remorse. However, very soon after, the exact same very basic mistake, I've found, even there have been some times when, even at the end of that very long conversation, he's gone ahead and done the thing he's been apologizing for straight after. So, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that where you do feel like I mean, they had these, 2, 3, 4 hour long conversations, and there would be moments in them where I thought, "Okay, we're getting there. Like this is a we're in a good place now." I remember thinking, "Okay, we're in a good place now." But it was like you just flip a switch and we're right back. Like we circle right back and it's like, "Did we just start this all over again? Like what
Yeah.
just happened?" And it would be right back again.
And they would take it usually a step further too. I had 2 relationships, one 7 years, one 17 years, so I have a lot of experience in this area,
I'm
and
sorry.
it would be distance. Like, you'd think, "Okay, we're getting to the end of this conversation," and something would turn, and then, my most recent ex would just then flip it and, and threaten ending the relationship, and then it would end up, I'd get the silent treatment, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, but then I'd always be the one that would go back in carefully, you know, "Can we talk? Can we?" It was hard.
You were always the one crossing that bridge to reconcile, to
Yes.
repair, to reconnect, to yeah.
Yep.
Jay, can you relate to that?
Definitely. I know that initially there were a lot of excuses around those periods of silence, whether it was, "Oh, I just need to calm down so I can come back to this discussion," or I'm not being silent to punish you. I'm just thinking of what to say, or I'm just processing what we've been discussing. But really it was just, I'm going to go away now. I'm not enjoying this discussion, and I'm going to make you come to me.
Mhm. So both of you have talked about over explaining, initiating repair, smoothing things over, managing the moods. Did you feel like in the relationship that this was just your responsibility? Like you were obligated to do it, or at least if you didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done?
Latter. Yes. If I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. Yeah, and looking back, it's so hard when you're in the moment because I was so invested emotionally that it sometimes didn't even feel like it was just repairing the relationship. It felt like survival for me. Like, I have to do this to survive. And now that I've stepped away, I see how ridiculous that was. But it felt like if I didn't do that, then, you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Well, it was in a constant emotional, mental, psychological threat.
yes.
Yeah. Jay, did you feel like if you didn't do this, this wasn't going to happen? Or maybe even you lived that and experienced that?
Absolutely. When the other person is leaving such a void in the responsibility of communication and working things through, and you are so emotionally invested, like Laura's saying, you do feel responsible to fill that void. But I think it comes at the cost of stepping back and seeing how much of an imbalance that really is, how much we're giving too much of ourselves and expending so much of our time and energy, when it is obvious through the patterns that, they're not actually changing their behaviors. It's all a bunch of words that are being used to smooth things over and quickly go back to normal so that we stop talking about this just so we can do it all over again.
And like a reset button. I call it a reset button.
Yes.
Go ahead, Laura.
I was gonna say, I don't know how many times, Jay, if you heard this too, or Renee, you know, um, I wanted to validate them because I've been through a lot of therapy and I know that validating each other can be very powerful when you repeat back what they said, in your own words, just so they know you heard them. So I would try to do that as much as I could because I wanted him to feel heard. And he would refuse to do that for me. So many times I would just get, "I understand. Got it." And but then sometimes I'd push and make him do it just because, I wanted to make sure that he was understanding. And by the end of that, I also felt exhausted because I felt like just to get, someone to repeat back what I was saying, it took enormous amounts of effort and energy to do. So, but I felt like most of the time he would just say, "I understand," to end the conversation so we could move on
It's like
and not.
slamming a door in your face.
Yes, exactly. But I was so leery hearing "I understand" because I knew that was just the cue to end the conversation and there was no growth, that that would be repeated, whatever we were discussing would be repeated again.
That's so
Yeah, one of the
devastating hearing that.
go ahead, Jay, say that again.
Hearing the words that are just there for the purpose of, "Hey, let's stop this conversation." When you've gone from being the one who's hurt in the situation, but as soon as they swap the victim role and act all sad or accusatory at you, then you swap roles into trying to comfort them and validate them,
Yes.
and then you're putting so much effort into making sure that they feel understood and seen when it should have been for you the whole discussion.
Jay, I couldn't agree with you more that it always, not always, but many times it flipped so that when I'd bring something up, it would then become, to your point, well, Laura, you did this. And so then anything that I had was dismissed and it turned into they were the victim and I had to pacify them.
And you were then
So I'm
defending
sorry.
yourself and convincing them that this was not a problem and here's why, or pumping them up. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. At what
And
point did do what? Laura, go ahead.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel like it happened right away. I feel like one of the things, because now when I look back, I'm like, why did I put up with this? And I feel like it was a slow boil. Like you got into a tub of water that was kind of cool and slowly heated up. But then things over the years got so heated, I didn't feel it because it like happened slowly. Whereas if I had just jumped into a relationship with that temperature, I would have known right away.
Right. I can relate to that completely. And the analogy that gets used is, a frog jumping into a pot of water.
Yes.
If you gradually turn up the water, the frog will boil to
Yes.
death. But if the frog jumped into a pot of water that's already boiling, the frog would jump back out. And
Right.
that's how it felt in this relationship, I know for me, and it sounds like for you as well. At what point, though, did you finally maybe start to notice did you notice the problems there with him first? Or did you notice the level of exhaustion inside of you? Like, what kinda clued you in that something wasn't right here?
Do you want to
Jay,
talk,
I'll come to
Jay?
you.
Okay. For me, I think it was the hurt that felt like betrayal to see something that had been gone over so many times at such great depth to then come full circle and still be doing the same action. The hurt from that, and then the insult to injury on top of it, of then once bringing that point up that should have already been learned to then be attacked for it and made feel bad, and to then question yourself as to whether you even have the right to feel bad to not be happy with this situation and everything that comes from that. I think it's a combination of the 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 despair and the betrayal of it with that overwhelming exhaustion of, oh, so I need to have another multi-hour discussion with you about this. Why do I need to?
Yeah. Go ahead, Laura.
For me, it was very dramatic. It was my kids. He got progressively um, verbally abusive with calling me, swearing at me, calling me terrible names. And I have three children. My 14-year-old, who's now 14, she heard we were together 7 years. The last year and a half of our relationship, we were living together and blended family. And when my daughter was hearing things, I couldn't live with that. So I ended it, moved out. We had to sell our house, so we continued to talk. And I thought, okay, maybe we can amicably do this. And I got a lot of therapy at that point and started to really set boundaries and hold my own. And he couldn't handle the boundaries. If I said I had a really tough session with my therapist and I couldn't talk today, he would freak out and say, that's a terrible thing.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
know, you wouldn't do that to your sister or your best friend. And I said, actually, I did. I told them the same thing. They called and I explained later I couldn't talk. I was emotionally exhausted. And I started to really see clearly that it was all about his discomfort and his needs, that what I needed, what my children needed, didn't matter.
So everything was about him, and you're pouring all
Yes.
of this energy into him.
Yes.
Yeah. When you have a relationship that is reciprocated, and I pour energy into, say, my sister or my best friend, and that energy is reciprocated, then it's actually motivating in life. It's invigorating. Okay,
Yeah.
it encourages that connection. Is like you just plugged into a power source, and it's great. But when you're pouring all this energy into this relationship and it's never reciprocated, it's never, and I say never, it is the far majority of the time not reciprocated. You might get a glimpse of it every now and then, but the far
Breadcrumbs.
majority of the time, say that again,
Breadcrumbs. You get
the
breadcrumbs. That's what keeps
breadcrumbs.
you going. Yes.
Yes, you
Yes.
get the breadcrumbs. And so the far majority of the time, they just take, and you pouring all of this energy. So you're doing all the over explaining, all the over justifying, all the over analyzing, all the overthinking. We're just over. And instead of like it being that you're plugging into a power source, you're plugging into a drain. And it just drains you and drains you and drains you and drains you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So,
Can't tell
Jay,
you
at
how
what
many.
point did you notice how much you were like how exhausted you were?
I didn't really pick up on it until I started looking into his behaviors and starting to see the pattern. And there was an element of being aware of it, but I don't think I was really paying attention and only learning about how much there's the rumination and everything all the time that I've been able to become more self-aware of how much I am doing it all day, every day, and never being able to switch off. Absolutely. And then to your point, when you do have discussions with people who are compassionate and empathetic and give you something back, it's so energizing in comparison. And there's been a few times where I've gone to discuss what's happening with someone, and they've just gone along with me and said, "Yeah, I believe you. I'm so sorry about that." And it takes me aback, and I think, "Oh, so I don't need to present a well written court case to you to for you to understand what's going on." Wow, yeah,
Huh. Yeah, it's amazing the difference when you run into people who are not narcissistic and antagonistic and manipulative. And
Yes.
and you've got this whole I know for me, I had a whole defense attorney list like kind of planned in my head of there was going to be this discussion and this conversation, all the overthinking, okay? And then when they're like, "Oh yeah, sure." Like, well, that was easy. What just happened there? Yeah. Okay. So how did like what felt the most exhausting to you about this role? How did all of this overdoing how did it affect you?
Laura.
Well, this past year, I think it was a storm in my life. My father is very ill, and so I became the primary healthcare advocate for him. And then things escalated with my fiance, and then when everything blew up with my kids, and I moved out, all of a sudden, when I was able to step aside and have my own space, I realized this isn't okay, and I realized I realized my nervous system was so dysregulated. And even at work, they were wonderful to me. They were so supportive and ended up giving me a few weeks off just to work on myself. I mean, that's, it's bad when your team at work is saying, go work on you, go do what
Yeah.
you need to do. So I think I had to step away. And then once I stepped away, I realized how absolutely worn down and exhausted I was.
I remember when I stopped doing the work is when I realized how tired I was. It's like, if you're working on a house project or something and you're working and you just keep pushing and you're working and you're like, okay, I could do a little bit more and you push. It's when you finally sit down and stop working that you realize, whoa, I'm kind of tired. I think I worked hard. It's the same kind of thing, except you're talking about decades, for some people in a relationship, or at least years in this relationship. And you've been working and working and working and working. And when you finally sit down from it, or you finally say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore, that's when you realize how tired you are.
There's that saying in Wisconsin, when the wind stops blowing, the cows fall down because they need that pressure to keep them up. They just fall, like, once the pressure stops, they fall down. And I think when you take a step back and realize, oh my gosh, I can't maintain this. Yeah.
Yeah. I hit that point that I realized I can't maintain this. Like
Mm-mm.
this is not sustainable. Jay, how about you? What felt the most exhausting about this role, or how did it impact you playing this role of always being the one to put in all this effort?
I think that it's noticing when you do try and step back and hope that they will be the one to take that role sometimes, and it just being met with silence and avoidance, and that's hard. Um, I always thought that I was generally a very introverted person and always stressing about something. So I felt that the fatigue and everything, the chronic fatigue was normal. But really it was really magnified by everything that was going on, and I think it was just part of the excuses of saying, "Hey, this is normal. I don't know any different." And if he's not trying, then I have to because this is valuable.
It's too valuable to not put in the effort.
That's right.
It's a family unit. It's a family unit. Like you have to put in the effort.
Right? It's not weakness, it's a commitment. You're committed to trying to save things.
Hmm. It's
That's
an
what hurts
investment.
the most for me, by the way, is that knowing how much effort I've been putting in to then have family members see it as I'm the one who's stepping away and just giving up and oh, you're not trying anymore. And when you just want to say, oh, I wish you could just see how much I am trying, and they're really, really not.
Wow. You bring up a good point
It's so
there, and
sweet.
I do think that's a very sore spot that a lot of people deal with, is you've put in all this effort, a daily basis, sometimes hourly basis of, saying it this way or that way, or have I tried this, or have I, given them that book or listened to this podcast or whatever. And then when you start to open up to your family or friends who don't see it, and you start talking to them about what's going on in your world, what do? They give you more suggestions for more things you can try. And you're like, I've already done all of this, and now here's another. And so I know they're trying to be helpful, but they don't understand that dynamic and they don't understand the level of exhaustion you're already at.
It also adds
It's
to what you have to do as well because it gives you that hope if there is something new that you haven't tried yet. Maybe this will be the key this time around. Maybe this will be the factor that changes things, and I just hadn't considered it before. It keeps you in the toxic loop of still trying.
It does. It's just one more thing to try. Laura, go ahead.
I think what, I finally realized is that, you think about yourself and I can tell we're all very similar. You have this amazing capacity, compassion. Not everyone is built that way. So when you're paired with somebody that does not, literally does not have the capacity, it doesn't matter how hard we try or what you do, what you say, if you say it differently, more lovingly, they do not have the capacity. So there's nothing you can do to build that for them. It has to come from them. And I think that's where, when you could finally accept, it's not that you haven't tried hard enough. They're just not built in a way to contain it.
That is very well put, and I love the way you're saying that. It brings me to my last question, which is what do you wish that others understood about this? The amount of effort that they're pouring in. Maybe they're listening right now going, I'm exhausted, but I got to try one more thing or I've got to do one more step. What do you tell them?
I
Jay,
think
I'll come to you on that.
I think they need to be honest with themselves and gentle with this in terms of considering the ratio to which they're giving so much of themselves and how much they're stepping on eggshells to try and um, get them to understand or get them to care about what they're doing or get them to not want to hurt you by continuing repetitive behaviors and to see that, if you're feeling like you're up in front of the jury and presenting a court case all the time and thinking things through and getting so exhausted by all of this, if you compare that gently with their lack of doing so and how readily they are to attack you or to hurt you further for all your efforts, it's then leading to the thoughts of, for your own self-respect and your own self-love to work towards telling yourself it's okay to stop doing that. It's okay to stop giving so much of yourself and giving so much of your time and letting it drain you like you are being drained from this and being able to work towards seeing that if it were going to change, then there would have been signs of that. There would have been proof that, from your discussions that there was change. After each apology, the behavior would have stopped, you know. It's about saying, "Hey, you've given so much and they've given so little. Maybe it's time to, for your own sake, start start leaving, start putting those boundaries down because otherwise, it's an endless vortex, and you'll always come up with reasons why you can keep going. Or I know even for me in the grieving stage of bargaining, I would even get to a point of considering, you know, a lot of people just deal with these marriages. There's a lot of arranged marriages out there. Maybe I can just become stoic. I can stop caring so much about this. He is how he is. I'll just manage it as it is. Lots of excuses and I'll just deal with it. This is everything I've wanted. I've put everything into this relationship. Beautiful house, wonderful family, thinking of all the pros that I don't want to lose in leaving this relationship. But it's I think it's noticing that that's not a healthy mindset to get into. And then that should be the point where you think, okay, this is not okay and I need to give myself permission to end this.
Yeah. At the very least, permission to quit pouring in all that effort.
Yes.
And then as you get healthier, you can decide what you need to do in life, like what direction is right for you. Mhm. Laura, how
Jay,
about you?
as I was listening to Jay, I can completely relate. You feel like you're losing so much. But I think there comes a point where, and I think this is whether it's already happened for you, it will. You're not losing as much as you think. You're actually getting something so much more wonderful. You're getting yourself. You are getting back to yourself. Because that is something that I have realized I lost so much of myself in this relationship. And to be able to reconnect and, just put myself first again, I'm giving myself the oxygen mask. And there is something so healthy and beautiful in that. And you know, I've realized that I I mean, I regret that it took this long for me to figure this out. However, I also know I've tried so hard and done everything I could. And now it is time to move on. It isn't love when somebody um, demands that from you and needs that because they can't handle the discomfort. So you're spending so much time when you're telling them what you need and they're flipping it back on what they need. And a loving relationship, in my opinion, doesn't drain you like what you said, Renee. It should energize you and you should be there to support each other. So I feel like, going forward, it's hard and there is a huge grief process and it's still takes me down sometimes, different times I don't expect it. But I'm also slowly finding myself, wow, I am enough. I am a good person, and
Yeah.
I want to get back to myself.
Yeah. Very well put, and thank you so much for sharing that. And it is a journey. It's a journey back to who we are because we poured it's like the central character of my life became him. My life was no longer about me. And in a marriage, it's a partnership. It's not a sacrifice of who you are. It's in fact in the partnership, it's an enhancement of who you are together, each individually. And so instead of it being an enmeshment, it's a partnership. But in that enmeshment, you do completely lose your identity because you're spending all of your time trying to keep peace with them. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I thank you for joining us in this conversation and for sharing, your experiences and your words. You are definitely not alone. There's a lot of people out there listening. They're going to relate 100% to what you're talking about. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Laura and Jay for their honesty and vulnerability in this conversation. What they described is something that so many people experience quietly, behind closed doors, believing that exhaustion means that they need to just try harder, not realizing that it's a signal that something is deeply out of balance. If you saw yourself in this episode, I want you to hear me clearly. Healthy relationships do require effort, but they do not require you to erase yourself. You are not failing because you're tired. You're tired because you've been carrying far more than your share. Your story matters, and you deserve to be heard without judgment. If you're ready to take the next step toward healing, check out my coaching services at covertnarcissism.com. If you're ready to join one of the community chats, you can check that out there too. And also, the 2026 retreats, in-person retreats, are now open for registration. That's on the website too. And don't forget to subscribe for more empowering episodes like this one. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. If there were ever an audience that I wish did not have to exist, it would be this one. Because of what it means you've lived through. I'm truly sorry that you understand this so deeply. And I'm really glad that you're here. May this be a place of safety, clarity, and peace. You are not alone anymore, and you don't have to figure this out by yourself. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And if you'd like to learn more about the support, resources, or coaching that is available for you, you can visit covertnarcissism.com. While I hate it for everyone who understands what I am talking about, I'm really glad that you're here, and I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those that she has worked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and the information provided. Thank you.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.